on apostrophes for you now. So apostrophes are often mistakenly used in writing. So I'm going to show you how you should use them, when you should use them, the different reasons that we might use apostrophes in our writing, and hopefully by the end of this lesson you will feel a little bit more confident about using them in your writing and also proofreading and checking that they have been applied correctly as well. So if you would like to learn how to use apostrophes correctly, then keep watching this video. We're going to discuss what an apostrophe is for and how to use them for the following things: for possession, singular and plural, contraction, omission, and then its versus its, with lots of examples to showcase these in action. Now I am going to put the different timings for these different parts of the video into the description box below, so just have a look there and click on the one you're looking for if indeed you're looking for something in particular. Alright, so there are actually quite a few different ways to use an apostrophe, and we're going to look at the three sort of main types. So number one, to show possession or ownership over something. To show a contraction, so that's when more than one word have been squished together and formed a new word. And finally, to show omission of something, so when a part of the word has been removed. So we're going to start with apostrophes for possession, ownership of something, and we're going to start with the singular, which is one single person or thing. In this case, one single person or thing who owns something. So what we need to do is we need to take our personal thing that we want to show owns something, and we're going to add an apostrophe and then an S to the end of that word. So here is Mary, and she's going to give us an example. So we want to show something about Mary's hair, the fact that it's tied in a bow. So here we've taken the word Mary and we've added an apostrophe S to the end to show that the hair belongs to her. We then want to show that the colour blue, in this case, belongs to the bow. So we've added on apostrophe S at the end of bow to show possession there. And then finally, we have her mum's hair is also blonde. Again, showing that her mum possesses or owns the hair. So we've added on that apostrophe S there. Again, unfortunately, she's a bit confused because she knows how to add on an apostrophe S to show possession for a singular, but she wonders, what if the person's name ends with a letter S anyway? What should you do? Okay, so the answer is there are two different things that you can do, and what I'm going to show you is the British way to do it. Americans actually do it in a slightly different way, but there's two ways to do it for us Brits. So here are the examples. So here we have Charles Dickens, and we want to say that his novels are excellent. So what we've done is we've just added on a little apostrophe after Dickens to show that the novels belong to him. So we don't add on an extra S, we literally just add on the apostrophe. There is a different way you could do it. You could do it like this. I tend to think that it looks a bit sort of clunky and awkward, but it's actually not grammatically incorrect to add on an extra S at the end, but there's too many S's for me personally. Okay, so here you have an example of someone whose name ends in two S's, in fact. So we've got Ross's favourite sport is rugby. And here you can see an example where, again, we've added on an apostrophe and an extra S as well. And there's three S's there. There's a lot of S's. Again, it's not technically incorrect. It just, for me, as I said, it's my preference. I think it just looks a bit clunky. So I prefer just to add on an apostrophe at the end of an S for a singular person whose name ends in an S. Going over apostrophes for possession for plural, so plural meaning multiple things, more than one person or thing, so showing that it belongs to a group of people or a group of objects, or in fact a collective object together. So it works in quite a similar way to the singular. So if it ends in an S, much like the names that ended in an S, like Charles Dickens or Ross, you simply add an apostrophe after the word. So for example, the elephant's trunks can squirt water. There, it ends in an S, just the same as a name with an S, and we've popped a little apostrophe on the end there to show that the trunks belong to them. So the same, if the name doesn't end in an S, all you do is exactly the same as the singular. You add an apostrophe and then an S after that. So, for example, the children's bedroom needed tidying. So it's always the sort of same way to do it. Pretty simple. I thought I'd give you a few more examples of apostrophes for possession, just so you can kind of see what they look like. So we've got here just the plain singular. So Jacob's favourite band is Metallica, Rock On Jacob. We've added on an apostrophe S, as you can see, highlighted in green. The table's leg was wobbly. So here we've got an item, an object, the table, but it is treated in exactly the same way. We've just added on an apostrophe S. And the clock's time was wrong. Again, just the same way. Then we've got more examples of the singular ending in an S, so one single thing. The glass's rim was chipped, and for these examples I've done it in my preferred way, which is just to add on the apostrophe at the end of the word. But again, you can add on an extra S if you want, but as I said, this is my way that I like. Karis's eyes are blue, and Mr. Jones's lessons are amazing. So there, in all three examples, the words end in an S and we've just added an apostrophe afterwards. So plurals, cinema's profits mostly come from popcorn. Apparently that's true. The tree's branches were twisted. Now in this case, it's a good example to show you how apostrophes can actually clarify whether you're talking about one thing or more than one thing. If we were to say that it was one tree whose branches were twisted, what we'd do is we'd pop on the apostrophe before the S. We'd be adding on an apostrophe and an S to show that it's one tree. But in this case, putting the apostrophe after the S shows that it is multiple trees. So it can be quite good to clarify different ideas for your reader. So plurals without an S, the men's friendship was very close. Bit of a bromance. The stationery's design is modern. So again, two examples of plurals, and we've added an apostrophe S there. So again, it's all the same sort of way, just to go over it one more time for an example for you. So moving on to apostrophes for contractions. So you may be thinking, what the heck is a contraction? Much like little Mary over here. Well, what a contraction is when two words become one word. So we have sad Charles Dickens over here to help us with this one. So here's an example. I do not like reading novels by Charles Dickens. So we talked about squishing those two words together to make a new word, and that's what we've done here. I don't like reading novels by Charles Dickens. So you probably use contractions all the time in your writing, but the really important thing to remember is to include that apostrophe there to show that it's actually two words that have been moved into one word. So do not, the O's been taken away. We've squished the two words together and we've added an apostrophe just to show where that O was before. When we think about apostrophes for contractions, like the do not becoming the don't, this is a way that I remember it, and I remember what a contraction is in literacy. So a contraction is a word that we normally associate with birth. If you think about birth, you think about these things called contractions. And what contractions are in birth is when the muscles are squeezing together to push a baby out. And what I imagine for contractions is that you have two words that are squeezing together, and actually out pops an apostrophe, just like that. So an apostrophe is born from the two words being squished together. That's how I remember it. Let's look at a few more examples of apostrophes for contractions, just to make sure you're really confident. So we have would not, turning that into a contraction. We're going to squeeze those words together. So would not, squeeze together, and out pops an apostrophe. The O disappears. I will becomes I'll. She is becomes she's. Again, we have to have that apostrophe there. It's what's showing us that we've dropped out a letter, and squished those two words together. They are, their. And this is a good way to remember the homophone there, and there. If you can split up the word there in the situation you're trying to use it in into they are, then you know that you should use this version of the word there. Could have becomes could have, and this is another one of those things that's a great learning opportunity, because quite often as an English teacher I see students writing could of instead of could have in their writing, would of, should of, and this is because when we squish those two words together, making a contraction, dropping out part of the word and adding in that apostrophe, it sounds a bit like could have when we say it, which is why I think most people tend to use could of in their writing instead of the grammatically correct could have. So that's just a little tool to help you remember that it should be have, not of, in those situations. Moving on, let's have a look at apostrophes for omission. So omission, to omit something means to leave something out. So it's exactly what it sounds like in this situation. A contraction is actually a type of omission because you're leaving out part of the word when you squash them together. Like when we talked about she is, we're taking away the I. We're omitting the I there. We're taking it away. We're leaving it out. The letter is dropped off, an apostrophe is placed where it once was, just like in the contractions we looked at. But sometimes it's not actually two words being squished together, it is just part of a word being dropped off. But we use that apostrophe to show that it's an abbreviated version of that word. Here's an example for you. So this is one you've probably seen before. Rock and roll becomes rock and roll. So it sounds very posh to say rock and roll. Rock and roll. So what we do is we omit the A and the D from and you know it says rock and roll, which sounds a lot cooler. So let's have a look at some more examples. So as I said, other types of omissions happen when parts of words are chopped off, and probably the most common time that you'll see these are when you're reading probably some fiction and a writer is trying to show a regional type of speech. So regional just means a particular region that someone comes from. So here we have Clara, the Victorian maid, and she's actually Cockney, she's from London, and this is how she might sound if she was very cross. She might say, "I haven't even had my breakfast yet," scowled Clara. So this is just a way of trying to make it sound like the way that it would be spoken. So haven't even had my breakfast yet. And we've got the apostrophes there, highlighted in orange, to show that we would have had H's, and they've been dropped off to show that she's talking with a particular accent. Otherwise, when we're reading it and we're imagining that voice in our mind, we wouldn't have any sort of guidance as to how it might sound. So this is a way for writers to show that. I wanted to show you just a few more examples of apostrophes for omission in words that you probably see all the time, just to give you a bit of an example. So cannot becomes can't because we've taken away one of the N's, one of the O's, popped out an apostrophe there to make it can't. O'er, it's quite common in romantic poetry, so they take away the V and make it o'er. Sometimes they do that to make it fit into a particular rhythm. Shakespeare does this quite a lot in his writing. We've got loving becomes lovin'. So you hear that in a lot of songs, and one particular famous fast food chain as well uses that. Take away the G, add an apostrophe to show it's missing, it's omitted. We've got because, might become 'cause. Maybe you use that when you're texting a friend, but you probably don't include the apostrophe there. We've got fish and chips, similar to rock and roll. Obviously, normally would be fish and chips. Right, now we're on to the really annoying one, the one that even I have to really think about before I write it down to make sure I'm using the right one. And this is its versus its. So this is the really annoying, tricky one that's a bit of an exception to the rule. Normally, when we're showing possession of something, we're going to add an apostrophe there, but for it, we actually don't. We just leave it completely as it is. And the reason for this is because we want to clarify between the two different versions of it's, basically. So if we've got possession, if we want to show possession, like in this example, the cat cleaned its paws, we want to just leave it as it is. However, if we want to make a contraction of it is, then we are going to add that apostrophe there to show that the two words again have been squashed together and the second I has been dropped out of the word. They've been contracted together. So this is the only time that you're going to include an apostrophe in that type of it. Very annoying, I know, but it is the one sort of quite tricky one to be a bit wary of. Here's an example of that. So it's a gorgeous day. So we could separate out the two words into it is a gorgeous day, and that would make sense as well. Okay, I've got a few more examples for you here of it's versus it's, just to finish that there. So we've got the possessive form, so showing possession of something. The sun beamed its beautiful rays on the ground below. The gem sparkled on her finger, its sharp angles reflecting light around the room. And in the field, a cow lazily flicked its tail, batting away the flies. In all of those examples that I've highlighted there for you, you can see that we do not have a single apostrophe. There isn't one in sight. And then for the contraction of it is, with the apostrophe, it's a lovely time of year in the summer. Again, thinking about how that word has been used, you can separate it out into it is. I love it. It's beautiful, the woman exclaimed. Again, it is beautiful, makes sense. And I can't believe it's only Wednesday. So the it is only Wednesday again. All right, it's time for me to share my super tip about apostrophes to you here. So this is what you need to know about apostrophes. They are always doing something and working really hard. They're a very functional type of punctuation mark. So if you see an apostrophe and it doesn't seem to be doing anything, it probably shouldn't be there. So I want you to bear this in mind when using apostrophes. What is this apostrophe actually doing? Is it showing that someone possesses something? Is it showing that two words have been squished together, a contraction? Or is it showing that there used to be a letter there that I've actually got rid of? If it's not doing any of those things, then you probably don't need that apostrophe. Okay, here's Mary again. She's not very happy. She's actually seeing red. So she gets really cross when she sees these kind of signs. And in this particular case, we've got fresh panini apostrophe S. So the question is, why do you think Mary is upset by this grammatical error? What is it exactly that is wrong with this sign? Can you figure it out based on what we've just spoken about? If you're wondering what the answer is, think back to the little tip that I just gave you. The fact that apostrophes are always doing something, working really hard. And in this case, the apostrophe actually isn't doing anything. It's trying to show that there are lots of paninis. They're all fresh. So fresh paninis, a multitude of delicious paninis. But actually, the panini doesn't own anything in this particular case. It's not short for anything, it's not showing that anything's missing, and therefore it doesn't actually need an apostrophe at all. And this is a very common error, so have a look and see if you can spot any next time you're out shopping, particularly for paninis. I hope this video has been helpful for you and you've learned a little bit more about how to use apostrophes correctly. Let me know if you want me to make more literacy based videos to help you with your grammar.